members of the states are elected under the first-past-the-post system. This approach can enable a candidate who does not necessarily have majority support to be elected. Research is therefore being undertaken to see whether the single transferable vote, or STV, and its introduction would be appropriate in Jersey. STV enables electors to rate candidates in order of preference. Rather than simply putting a number of crosses on a ballot paper, as is the case at present, electors would indicate their preferred candidate by rating them from 1 to 3, for example, on the ballot paper. These preferences would then be taken into account to ensure that the candidates who are elected are those who have the most support overall. So the Commission is continuing to give this issue further consideration in consultation with its advisers, and will make its recommendation in December. The second matter which we are continuing to consider concerns legislative scrutiny. The Commission believes that steps need to be taken to strengthen parliamentary democracy in Jersey and to ensure that draft legislation is properly scrutinised before it is enacted. Our inquiries have demonstrated that most primary legislation in the states is enacted with minimal parliamentary scrutiny. The Commission recognises that members of the states should ensure that any legislation brought before the Assembly is fit for purpose and that it has no unintended consequences. However, the Assembly, as Jersey's legislature, spends only a very small percentage of its time debating legislation, and the review of draft legislation by scrutiny is extremely limited. One suggested solution is the creation of a second chamber, where a small number of members acting in an honorary capacity could be tasked to perform this function. Another is the introduction of a new parliamentary committee, perhaps augmented by outside expertise, as with the present Public Accounts Committee. The Commission considers this to be an important area, and, as I have said, will be undertaking further research before we make a final recommendation in December. So what are the next steps? I hope that we have provided you with an overview of our provisional recommendations to date. The panel Commission would welcome your views and ask you to forward any views or comments that you wish to do by Friday the 23rd of November. Our report is going to be sent to every household in the island this week, and we are going to be holding meetings in every parish hall during the first 2 weeks of November in order to discuss our draft proposals with islanders. We will obviously be taking account of the feedback we receive and developing our final recommendations for publication in December. Our final report will be presented to the Privileges and Procedures Committee, who will present our proposals to the states prior to submitting them to the electorate in a referendum next year. The interim report will be available for everyone to collect as they leave the assembly room. Thank you for attending this presentation this morning. If there are any points of clarification that anyone would like to raise in relation to the presentation, particularly perhaps the media, we have a short time remaining, and we'll be happy to take any questions that there might be. Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, point of clarification. Quite like some clarification on this question of number of members. I the visuals to say that we're recommending 42 members particularly, 7 deputies per district without constables, or 5 deputies with constables. Now, that suggests that the latter has 36 members. The narrative suggested that you need a minimum of 42 under the present machinery. Could you clarify that, please?
Well, forgive me, one applies a 6 times table to this. If there are 7 deputies in 6 districts, we arrive at 42 members. If there are 5 deputies per 6 in the 6 districts, we have 30 deputies. Add 12 to that, 12 constables, and you arrive at 42 in total. So that's the thinking. Deputy Senator Pond.
Thank you. Thank you. The Commission, a lot of work has gone into this, but you stated at the beginning of your introduction that it was important that the committee felt democracy should be strengthened. How does the Commission feel democracy can be strengthened by a proposal to remove the most democratically elected and most accountable office, that of Senator? And how can a recommendation for a referendum be made to retain constables in the states without having a referendum to retain the island-wide mandate? And thirdly, unless I'm mistaken, I thought the brief of the Commission was to have a referendum, or if it wasn't, it would be sensible surely to have a referendum on the final recommendation of the overall package for the people to choose the new system, rather than just have a referendum on retaining the office of constable. And you also said, sir, that the equal-sized constituencies must be achieved, or that would be impossible, having to elect 12 constables in 12 parishes with vastly different electoral sizes.
Can I make it clear first of all that the referendum, and this is a matter which the Commission will be considering in more detail over the next couple of months, will certainly have 2 questions. One question will be the issue of whether or not the senators should go and there should be replaced by 6 districts electing a number of deputies. That will be one question. And the second question will be whether the Comm'n should remain in the states or not. So the people will have an opportunity to decide on the question of whether or not the senators should remain. I don't know whether any member of my Commission would like to deal with the earlier part of the question as to the issue of the island-wide vote.
The important thing about the island-wide mandate is that we looked at the system in total, and the problem with the island-wide mandate at the moment is that it effectively concentrates all debate on island-wide issues into an election for 8 people, as it would be in the next election. And all the other elections for constable and deputies tend not to focus on island-wide issues. And it was our belief that we should try and find a system which found the best of the island-wide mandate, which was that ability for people to think beyond their immediate parish and bring that energy and that sort of positivity around island issues to the election of all members of the states. And you're right, of course, that in a sense the island-wide mandate is the most democratic in inverted commas. However, it is impossible to have all states members elected on an island-wide mandate. And given that, we felt that the best system was to remove the division between states members and have one class of states members who we would hope would be able to address issues of an island-wide nature.
Mr. Teddy.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Can I just congratulate, first of all, the whole Commission on their hard work on this. And I don't know if it's possible to put the slide back to the guiding principles that we showed very early on. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate again the Commission on taking on board the 3 guiding principles of Reform Jersey, because that they seem to be word for word what you've got up there. What I'm interested in is if we focus on the 3 guiding principles, in particular the fact of equal-sized constituencies. How does one come up with retaining the constables as one of the options? Because that clearly goes against the second guiding principle, and I don't see one of the other guiding principles as being the retention of the parish system in terms of the constitution of the state of Jersey. So could the Commission perhaps answer that question? I also noticed there were 52% of people in favour of the 4-year term, which was coincidentally the same as those in favour of removing the constables from the states. So will the 4-year term be put to a referendum as well, or is it simply the constables who will be put to a referendum and not the 4-year term, which has the same amount of support from those who made submissions?
I think there's a distinction to be drawn between the constables, and I'll come to that in a moment, and the length of the term, because the majority of respondents who gave their views to the Commission thought that there should be an increase in the term or mandate of members. The majority of people thought it should be 4 or 5 years rather than 3 years. If one takes the midpoint between those who thought that there should be a 5-year mandate and those who thought there should be a 3-year mandate, one comes to 4 years. So 4 years seems to be the median point at which we arrived, and it happens to be the decision which the states have already made, with which we agree. So far as the constables are concerned, it is true that you cannot have equally sized constituencies if the constables remain in the states. So there is a balance, there is an argument to be had here between those who feel very strongly that the parish system is so important and the constable as head of the parish is so important and his role is so important that it should be maintained. And those, on the other hand, who feel that the principle of voter equity is the one which ought to take primacy. Now, the population, to be frank, is, as we have ascertained from the submissions that have been made to us, is almost equally divided. And the Commission's solution to this problem is to say, well, this is a matter for the people to decide. Deputy Martin?
We'll let the public have some speaking on this. I mean, it's all very well to have a chat amongst the politicians, but the public are here as well.
Well, most of those putting their hands up...
Well, I'm putting my hand up.
I spotted one who is not a member of the States, and I'm going to come to her in just a moment.
Yes, it's not a speech, it's just a clarification about the even, or the new system of being even. Isn't it true, I mean, Helena already has 10 plus 1, which are why you carve it up under the new system. If we retain a constable, we still only have 1 constable and 10 representatives, 5 and 5. Whereas when you have the groupings in the country of 4, yes, they will have 5 deputies, they will retain 4 constables, which puts a different emphasis again on the country constable, and you have groupings of 4. And I don't actually understand the numbers for St Eliot, whichever. I understand it if we don't have the constables, but we maintain the status quo in St Eliot if we do. It's the number 11.
The broad principle is that the 6 districts should be of more or less equal size. They're not exactly equal, but they are broadly equal size, because we are recommending that the parish boundaries should be maintained for the 6 different districts. The point that you make is, I think, the same point that was made by Deputy Tadier. If one keeps the constables in the states, one cannot have voter equity in the sense of an equal number of voters electing each member of the states. on the other hand side of the coin, you have to balance the desirability of preserving and enhancing the parish system, which is very important in the island, and maintaining the position of the constable as head of the parish. So this is the matter which will have to be decided in the referendum. Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Janice Eden, could I have that slide up again, please, which shows how exactly you're going to split the members up, which is what my previous people have been talking about. Can I also say that I'm the first person to enter into the hallowed grounds of talking to the Commission, and I wasn't convinced that you were going to take on board the numerous people like myself who had something to say about the constables. And I want to commend you that you have listened to us. And thank you very much for doing that. Now, looking at divide Jersey into 6 electoral districts, maths wasn't necessarily my strong point. But I'm not quite sure how you're going to get. Could you go to the next one, please? No, the one before, maybe.
Sorry, that's actually the district.
The one which says 7 and no constables, or 5 and 1.
There.
The options?
Yeah.
We'll get there. Thank you. Now, if you take St Helier, if you take 5 deputies with constables, help me out here, people, that is 6 in each. 5 in each with a constable gives you 6. 6 is 37.
No, because there are 6 districts, but there are 12 parishes.
Ah, right. So my point is, St Helier, and we've got 2 votes in St Helier, only has 1 constable.
That's right, yes.
So you're going to have to put 7 in each. 7 in both of those.
I think you've got to take the 12 constables.
Yes.
That's 12 together. And then you have a number of deputies in 6 districts.
Right.
If you have 5 deputies in 6 districts, that adds up to 30. You add that to the 12 constables and you come to 42. If you don't have the constables in the states, you have 7 deputies in each district, and you multiply 6 by 7, and you still come to 42.
So which constables will go to make up the ones in St Helier 1 and 2, where you have a block? I'll leave that
If I can answer that. If you took that option, if the electorate wanted that option, the constables remain elected by their parishes as at the moment. And as people have said, that does give a situation where there isn't equality, because parishes are of different sizes. But if you had that option, you would then have your 6 new districts with 5 members. So, but what that means is that everybody would have the same number of votes. That would be the important principle. Does that help?
Thank you.
Can I remind the audience, of course, that we're going to have a number of meetings in parish halls at which you will have the opportunity to study the interim report in more detail, and certainly the Commission will be very glad to receive detailed questions from anyone who wishes to put them. Can I suggest we have 2 more questions? And there's a gentleman at the back that I saw there who is not a member of the States, and perhaps I'd better take another non-member of the States over there. So, gentleman at the back.
My name is Pete Doyle, and I wonder whether the Commissioner's point of going back to the original intention of having constable. And that's the reason why when the constable was ill or wasn't paid, the chef took his place. The constable was not and never has been elected as a member of the state. He was there, and my great-grandfathers were 2 of them who went over to the Privy Council to see about it. The constables were there to represent at that time the principles of the parish and ownership of the parish. And the chef was the same. Since the war, it was then said principles and rate. The constables were there to represent their parish. They were not members of the state. They should not have been on committees. They should certainly never have been the presidents of committees. And that's what you should go back to. And why nobody has ever picked this up, nobody has ever said, why was the shed there? Why did the shed there? Because not one of you has bothered to look at the reason why my great-great-grandfather went over to the Privy Council to complain that the Jurats were left in their own way. And the constables were put in to represent the views of the parish. They could suggest legislation, but only for their parish. They are not, never have been, and should never be members of the state.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think that's rather a comment more than seeking. It's an important comment. It's a very important comment, but it's not a request for clarification. So perhaps I can come to the next and final question on the other side.
The question I want to address is the retention of the constables, and that's pretty central to, as I perceive it, democracy in the island. If it's going to be changed, and that has to, constables must go. We must have that one category of states members. So how do you see the retention of constables addressing the issue of the town-country divide which has existed for several centuries? The divide between the urban and the rural, and the modern real divide between the rich and the not so rich, including the poor who live in the town. Because retaining the constables will still surely lead to that dominance of the country districts, and that is where wealth resides. Therefore, it's going to be less democratic because urban areas are less well represented.
I think that the question of the constables is really a question which, as the panel commission has said, is a question which is going to be decided by the population and not by the Electoral Commission. So far as the divide between rich and poor is concerned, and I'm sympathetic to the idea which I think Mr. Cornu is putting forward, which is in essence that the states should contain representatives of every single branch of our society, every single part of our community. And it seems to me that, it seems to the Commission, that the creation of 6 large districts will have the advantage that politics will be driven into the centre. It will not be possible to seek election by persuading a small number of rich people that you are somebody to be put in the states. It will equally not be possible to be elected by 1 or 2 housing estates and put into the states on that basis. A large district has the tremendous advantage that you broaden the scope of electors to which members of the states must appeal if they are going to be elected. And that is one of the factors that underlines part of the thinking of the Commission. But in it, Dr.
Yes, it's just a couple of concluding thoughts from my point of view. I don't currently live in the island, but it's been very interesting to come back and see the political debates around this. And I've noted the comments today, and I think it's very easy to be critical of proposals like these ones we've come up. And I would just make a plea, really, for looking at things possibly slightly differently and think about it in an optimistic way. What I hope we've done is created an opportunity for debate. And for all those people who think that the constables should be in, there is the possibility to argue for that. For all those people who think that they shouldn't be in, there's the possibility to argue for that. And it's not something that we've decided. We've not sort of said you should do this or you should do that. In a way, we've handed it over to the island.